All right, welcome to The Explainer. We all know AI chatbots are amazing, right? But they have this one massive problem. They make stuff up. They lie. So today, we're going to break down this incredible solution that's finally teaching AI not just to tell the truth, but to actually prove it.
Seriously, why do AI models make things up? I mean, you've been there, right? You ask it for a simple fact, and it just invents an answer. Spits out a total hallucination with this incredible confidence. It's wild. So, what is going on? Why does some of the smartest tech on Earth just lie?
Well, here's the problem. At their core, most of these AI models are basically stuck with a fixed library of info they were trained on. Think of it like this. They can't just go browse the web or grab a fact book off the shelf. So when you ask them something they weren't explicitly trained on, they hit a gap. And instead of just saying, hey, I don't know, they guess. They hallucinate, filling in the blanks with something that sounds plausible, but is, often completely wrong. Okay, so how do we fix this? Enter the RAG solution. We're essentially giving the AI an open book test. The best way to think about it is this. Instead of making the AI try to remember everything perfectly from memory, we just give it the book. We give it a library and tell it, hey, look up the answer before you speak.
So, what is Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or RAG, exactly? It's a system that cleverly combines two different kinds of knowledge. First, you've got what's called parametric memory. That's all the stuff already baked into the model from its training. But then, RAG adds non-parametric memory, which is just a fancy way of saying an external searchable library of facts that you provide. The key here is the order. The model looks up the facts in that external library first, and only then does it write an answer based on what it found. It's proof, then answer.
And you know what? This approach is becoming the new default for a reason. It's a total game changer. I mean, it consistently beats models that only use their internal memory. And the big thing here is trust. It makes the AI's claims checkable because it gives you citations. It literally proves where the facts came from. All of this just creates a much more reliable and adaptable AI that you can actually trust.
All right, so let's get into the blueprint. How does RAG actually work? Let's pop the hood and take a look.
Okay, it basically boils down to a four-step dance. First is indexing. This is where you take all your documents and organize them into a searchable library. Then, when you ask a question, retrieval kicks in. It zips through that library and grabs all the stuff that seems relevant. But here's a really important step, reranking. This is where the system gets smart and pinpoints the absolute best, most relevant piece of evidence from everything it found. And only then, once it has that solid proof, does it move to generation, writing the final answer and, crucially, citing its source.
So just how good is this approach? Get this. There's a RAG-style model called Retro that managed to match the performance of the giant GPT-3 model. Okay, pretty cool. But the insane part? It did it using 25 times fewer parameters. 25 times? That's not just an improvement. That is a revolutionary jump in efficiency.
But, it's not all easy. To get RAG to actually work, you have to solve some tricky little problems. One of the biggest is called chunking. You can think of it as the Goldilocks problem. See, if you chop up your documents into pieces that are too small, you lose all the important context. But if you make the chunks too big, key facts can get buried in the middle and the model just ignores them. So you have to find that sweet spot, that just right size, which is usually somewhere around 200 to 400 tokens. Okay, so we've got the blueprint. But what does this look like in the real world? This brings us to the most important part of all, the reality check. We're talking about truth with receipts. And really, this quote says it all. The goal here is to prove where the facts came from. This isn't just about getting a slightly better answer. No way. The whole point of RAG is to build a system where you can prove with zero doubt where every single piece of information originated. It's about finally getting rid of that AI black box. Of course, things can still go wrong. This stuff isn't magic. So here's a little peek into the playbook engineers use when things break. For instance, check out that top row.
Let's say the AI gives you a great answer, but the citation is just wrong. What's the likely cause? The chunks are probably too long, so the fix is to shrink them down and add a better re-ranker to be more precise. See? For every common symptom, there's a likely cause and a targeted fix to get things back on track.
So how do we even know if we're succeeding? Well, we can't just look at the final answer and call it a day. Success is measured across 4 key things. First, obviously, is the answer correct? That's table stakes. Second, the retrieval quality. Did it even find the right documents in the first place? Third, attribution quality. Are the citations actually correct? Do they back up the claim? And finally, there's faithfulness. Does the answer stick to what the source actually says, or did the AI get a little creative and start adding things? Okay, so when you put all of this together, what's the big payoff? Why should you care? Why does this change everything? Because here it is. This is probably the most important thing to remember from this whole explainer. RAG represents a massive shift. We're moving away from AI that just sounds believable to AI that is actually provable. It's a difference between blind faith and verifiable facts. And it's also super important to know when RAG is the right tool for the job and when it's not. It's simple, really. If the answer already exists somewhere in your documents, like what were the findings of our 2023 report, then you retrieve it. That's RAG. But if the answer needs to be calculated or it needs live up-to-the-second data, like what's the current price of Google stock, then the AI needs to use a tool, like an API call. Knowing that distinction is absolutely key. And look, this isn't some niche experimental idea anymore. This quote really nails it. The people in the know, the ones actually building this stuff, now treat retrieval-augmented models as the new default. It's the baseline for creating AI that's reliable, adaptable, and, most importantly, attributable. So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. What does the future look like when every single answer you get from an AI isn't just something you have to take on faith, but is a verifiable fact that you can instantly check? What changes in our world when, because the AI said so, actually becomes a good enough reason to believe something?